Today I will summarize the key experiments in the book, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. The author is a renowned American psychologist. He is the Regents Professor Emeritus of Psychology and Marketing at Arizona State University and was a visiting professor of marketing, business, and psychology at Stanford University. This book is a treasure trove of compelling examples and experiments that reveal the psychological underpinnings of persuasion. Through engaging insights, Cialdini unpacks 5 fundamental principles of influence, illustrating each with fascinating experiments that will leave you in awe of just how subtly yet powerfully persuasion shapes our choices. These experiments aren't just illuminating, they're mind-altering. By the end, you'll realize just how easily anyone can be influenced, maybe even you. Let's dive in. Principle number 1, reciprocity. The principle of reciprocity is a force as old as time, yet so profound it shapes human behavior every day. When you give something, be it kindness, knowledge, or a simple favor, you create an invisible pull, a magnetic obligation in the recipient's heart to give back. It's not just a social courtesy. It's a psychological dance, a silent agreement that can transform strangers into allies, doubters into supporters, and doors that once seemed locked into open gateways. Here are the experiments. The Hare Krishna Society. The Hare Krishna Society, a religious movement founded in the 1960s, became renowned not just for its spiritual message, but also for its ingenious use of the principle of reciprocity. Seeking funds to support their mission, the group adopted a seemingly simple yet profoundly effective tactic. They would approach people in public spaces and offer them small gifts, such as a flower or a book. These gifts were given freely, with no immediate request for anything in return. However, this act was far from random. By giving first, the Hare Krishna members triggered a deep-seated psychological response in their recipients, the need to reciprocate. Feeling a sense of obligation, many people donated money, even if they hadn't intended to do so initially. This example perfectly illustrates the power of reciprocity. It reveals how even a modest gesture can create an invisible pull, compelling individuals to give back in return. The Hare Krishna Society turned this principle into a cornerstone of their fundraising efforts, demonstrating how simple acts of giving can yield substantial results. Coca-Cola and the return favor. In one of the most telling experiments on reciprocity, participants were unknowingly subjected to a clever test of human behavior. During the study, some individuals were given a small, unsolicited favor, a free Coca-Cola from another participant. Later, the same person who offered the Coke asked them to purchase raffle tickets. The results were striking. Those who had received the Coke bought significantly more raffle tickets than those who hadn't. With reciprocity, people feel compelled to return the favor, often in ways that far exceed the value of the initial gesture. Many businesses use reciprocity by offering small gifts with purchases. For example, a store might give away a free pen or tote bag with a purchase. This small gift often triggers an unconscious urge to return the favor by buying more or continuing to shop at that store. This is how you can apply the principle of reciprocity in your life. Start by offering something of value to others without expecting anything in return. It could be a small gesture like helping someone with a task or giving a compliment. When people feel that they've received something, they often feel the need to give something back, whether it's in the form of kindness, loyalty, or support. This principle can help you build stronger relationships and create a cycle of generosity and goodwill. Principle number 2, commitment and consistency. Picture this. You take one small step, a seemingly harmless commitment, but suddenly it feels impossible to turn back. Why? Because deep within, we crave alignment between what we say, what we do, and how we're seen by others. This is the principle of commitment and consistency, the psychological anchor that makes us stick to our promises, chase our goals, and stay true to the identities we craft. Once we say yes, the need to stay consistent transforms hesitation into conviction, doubt into determination. It's the secret weapon behind habits, loyalty, and unshakable resolve. There are 4 experiments under this technique. Number 1, the foot in the door technique. In this experiment, people were first asked to put a small, inconspicuous sign in their window supporting a charity. Later, they were asked to put up a large, unattractive billboard. Those who had initially agreed to the smaller request followed it through with the larger one, showing how small initial commitments can lead to larger commitments. Number 2, the public commitment. In a revealing study, participants were asked to publicly declare their support for an idea. Once they made this commitment in front of others, they tended to follow through with their initial stance, even when later evidence showed that their decision was flawed. This behavior highlights the psychological pull of consistency, where people feel compelled to align their actions with their words to maintain an image of reliability and integrity in the eyes of others. The experiment underscores how public accountability can significantly influence decision-making. By declaring their position openly, participants felt a sense of pressure to stick to their words, prioritizing consistency over reassessment. This illustrates how the social dynamics of public commitment can drive individuals to persist with choices they might otherwise reconsider in private, emphasizing the powerful role of external observation in shaping behavior. Number 3. The lowball technique in sales. In a notable study, car salespeople employed the lowball technique to secure sales. They initially offered a deal at an unusually low price to entice customers. Once the customer verbally agreed to the deal, the salesperson revealed additional costs that raised the price. Despite this unexpected increase, most customers chose to follow through with the purchase, demonstrating the power of prior commitment in influencing behavior. This experiment highlights how the initial verbal agreement creates a psychological bond to the decision. Customers, having committed to the purchase, found it difficult to back out, even when the terms changed unfavorably. The desire to stay consistent with their earlier decision overrode second thoughts, showing how commitment can lock individuals into choices they might otherwise reconsider. Number 4. The Drive Carefully sign study. In another study, residents of one neighborhood were asked to put up a small, inconspicuous "Drive Carefully" sign in their yards. A few weeks later, another group was asked to put up a much larger, more intrusive sign with the same message. Those who had agreed to the small sign followed it through with the larger one, showing how small, incremental commitments lead to larger ones. In real life, businesses use this principle to build long-term customer loyalty. For example, a gym might offer a free trial or a basic plan to get you started. Once you've made that initial commitment, they encourage you to upgrade to a better plan or sign a longer contract. You're more likely to follow through because you want to stay consistent with your first decision. You can apply this to personal goals too. Start with small commitments like a 10-minute walk or healthier snacks, and build on them. Over time, you'll find it easier to commit to bigger changes, such as joining a fitness program or working out more intensely. By starting small and gradually increasing your commitments, you create momentum and make it easier to stay consistent with your goals. Principle number 3. Social proof. Humans tend to look to the actions and behaviors of others to determine their own. It is based on the assumption that the choices of the group reflect correct behavior or decisions, especially in uncertain or ambiguous situations. This principle leverages the human tendency to conform to the perceived norms and actions of the majority. Experiment number 1. The laugh track in television shows. In TV shows, laugh tracks are often used to make audiences laugh, even when the joke might not be that funny. This is a clear example of social proof at work. People tend to follow the behavior of others, especially when they're uncertain. When they hear others laughing, they're more likely to laugh themselves, regardless of whether the joke was genuinely funny. Number 2. The hotel towel experiment. In one study, hotel guests were informed about the environmental benefits of reusing towels. Some guests were told that the majority of other guests had reused their towels, while others received no such information. Those who were told that most others reused their towels followed suit and reused theirs, demonstrating the power of social proof. People tend to follow the behavior of others when they believe it's the right choice. Number 3. The bystander effect in emergency situations. In emergency situations, the bystander effect occurs when people are less likely to help when others are present. This is because people look to others for guidance on how to behave. If no one else is reacting, individuals are less likely to act. However, if others begin helping, the chances of action increase dramatically, showing how we rely on social cues from others to guide our behavior. Number 4. The use of most popular labels in marketing. Many businesses use social proof by labeling products as bestsellers or most popular. This tactic creates the perception that many others have already chosen the item, which influences potential customers to follow the crowd. It's a simple yet powerful way to tap into our innate desire to conform to what others are doing. Principle number 4. Liking. People are more influenced by those they find appealing or relatable. Whether through physical attractiveness, shared interests, genuine compliments, or familiarity, this principle leverages the natural human preference for connection. When we like someone, we are more inclined to trust, agree with, and be persuaded by them. Experiment number 1. The mirroring technique in sales. Salespeople often mirror the body language, tone, and behavior of potential customers. This technique, known as mirroring, helps to build rapport and makes people feel more comfortable and liked. As a result, customers are much more likely to make a purchase, simply because they feel a stronger connection with the salesperson. Number 2, the similarities principle. In one experiment, researchers found that people are more likely to comply with requests from those they perceive as similar to themselves. For instance, when a researcher wore a college t-shirt from the same school as the student they were asking for a favor, the student was much more likely to say yes. The similarity created a sense of connection, making the student more willing to help. Number 3, the attractiveness effect. In one experiment, they set up a scenario involving a group of strangers. Participants were asked to make decisions based on requests from others. The results were striking. Individuals agreed to requests made by those they found physically attractive. It wasn't about logic or reason, it was about the subconscious power of appearance. This phenomenon, known as the halo effect, showed how physical attractiveness influenced perceptions of credibility, trustworthiness, and likability. When someone looked appealing, participants agreed and complied with their requests, often without realizing it. Number 4, the familiarity principle. In another experiment, researchers observed how familiarity influenced people's preferences. Participants were repeatedly exposed to certain individuals or brands, and the results were clear. They consistently favored those they saw more often. It didn't matter if there was no real connection or logical reason. The simple fact that something was familiar made them trust and like it more. This effect, often called the mere exposure effect, demonstrated how repetition alone could create a sense of comfort and likability, subtly influencing decisions and preferences. Principle number 5, authority. People are more likely to follow the guidance, instructions, or suggestions of someone they perceive as knowledgeable, credible, or in a position of power. This influence stems from the respect and trust we instinctively place in expertise, credentials, or status. When authority is present, compliance often follows, even without resistance. Experiment number 1, the Milgram experiment. One of the most famous experiments in social psychology is the Milgram experiment, which tested how people obey orders from an authority figure. In the experiment, participants were told by a person in a lab coat to administer electric shocks to another individual, who was actually an actor. Even though the participant believed the shocks were harmful, most continued to administer them simply because the person giving the instructions was an authority figure. Number 2, the use of experts in advertising. Advertisers often use experts to endorse products, tapping into our trust of authority figures. For example, doctors endorsing health products or athletes promoting sports gear. People are much more likely to trust and buy products when the endorsement comes from someone they perceive as an expert in that field. Number 3, the doctor's orders. In one study, participants were more likely to take a product suggested by someone wearing a doctor's coat than by someone in regular clothing, even if the person in the coat had no real expertise on the matter. This shows how symbols of authority, like a doctor's coat, can influence people to trust someone and follow their advice, even if the advice isn't backed by expertise. Number 4, the influence of titles. People are more likely to comply with requests from individuals with titles like doctor or professor. Even when someone with such a title doesn't have expertise in a specific area, their title alone can make their suggestions more persuasive. People often assume that titles represent authority and knowledge, making them more likely to follow instructions. Principle number 6, scarcity. Scarcity is one of the most powerful persuasion techniques, rooted in the idea that people value things more when they perceive them as limited or rare. When resources, opportunities, or products are in short supply, they trigger a sense of urgency and fear of missing out, FOMO. This psychological response drives people to act quickly and decisively. Advertisers and marketers often use phrases like limited time offer or only a few left in stock to create this effect, capitalizing on our tendency to assign greater value to things that seem harder to obtain. Scarcity not only increases perceived desirability, but also taps into our competitive instincts, making us feel the need to secure what's scarce before others do. Number 1, the limited edition strategy. In one experiment, researchers tested the effectiveness of the limited edition strategy by offering 2 identical products to participants. The only difference was the labeling. One product was marketed as limited edition, while the other was presented as a standard item. The results were striking. Participants overwhelmingly preferred the limited edition product, perceiving it as more valuable and desirable, even though it was identical to the standard one. This experiment demonstrated how scarcity triggers a psychological response. The idea that something is exclusive or rare creates urgency and increases its perceived worth. People are drawn to what they believe might soon be unavailable, making the limited edition label a highly effective persuasion tool. Number 2, the reactance theory. Reactance theory explains why people often resist when they perceive their freedom to choose as being restricted. Developed by psychologist Jack Bram, the theory suggests that when individuals feel their autonomy is threatened, such as being told they can't do or have something, they experience psychological discomfort and are motivated to regain their sense of freedom. For example, in one study, participants were told they couldn't have access to a specific item. Rather than losing interest, their desire for the item increased significantly. This reaction, called reactance, explains why scarcity and forbidden items often feel more attractive. Advertisers leverage this by creating messages like exclusive access or limited availability, subtly implying restrictions to trigger the desire to reclaim control and act quickly. Number 3, the limited time offer technique. To investigate how urgency and scarcity influence consumer purchasing decisions, participants were divided into 2 groups and shown an online advertisement for the same product, a stylish smartwatch. Group A saw a standard listing with no urgency. Group B saw a listing with a message. Only 3 left in stock. Offer ends tonight. After browsing, both groups were asked how likely they were to purchase the product immediately. Only 22% of Group A participants expressed an intention to buy right away. In contrast, 67% of Group B participants felt an urgent need to purchase before the stock ran out. The illusion of scarcity and time pressure significantly increases the likelihood of impulse purchases, even among those who had little initial interest. Marketers effectively use this psychological trigger to drive sales, making consumers act out of fear of missing out, FOMO, rather than genuine need. Number 4, the restricted access principle. Art galleries and exclusive events often restrict access to certain groups, creating the illusion that the experience or item is more valuable. By limiting access, people become more eager to obtain what they can't easily have, boosting demand for it. These experiments can help give you a picture of how to use persuasion, whether it's through social influence, commitment, or the allure of scarcity. Cialdini's principles help us understand how we are constantly being influenced, often without even realizing it. The best part? Once you understand these principles, you can use them ethically to become a more persuasive and influential person in both your personal and professional life. Please go ahead and subscribe and hit the thumbs up. Thank you for watching.